In election 2016, tonight the Republican candidates face off in their first debate of the new year, sixth in the series. The debate in Charleston, South Carolina is a critical event that may help shape the contest heading into the Iowa caucuses, which are now, about 2.5 weeks away. So joining us now, News4JAX political analyst Jennifer Carroll. Hey, good morning. Haven't had a chance to say happy holidays, so happy New Year to you. Let's talk about Paul Rand. The past few days have not been kind to him, but Paul Ryan, I'm sorry. No, Rand Paul.
We're all wrong.
We had been talking about Paul Ryan and his role as House Speaker a little bit earlier. Anyhow, yeah, Rand Paul. And if you listen to his rhetoric, he says, I'm not going down without a fight.
We were just told that they have a mathematical problem over there and they're adding the numbers, and we think they're confused because they're not including us on the main stage, and we think they're really wrong with that. I mean, we do not think that anyone should really be able to characterize our campaign as anything less than first tier.
Now, the Des Moines Register came out with a poll just the other day, and he placed fifth. Does he have a leg to stand on here?
No, because it's the same criteria that all the other candidates have to play by, and he knew that. But he said from time past that if he is not on the main stage, he's not going to participate in the kiddie stage. So we just have to move forward with that. We have 7 candidates on the stage now. It has dwindled down from the massive amount of candidates that we have, and hopefully each candidate will have more time to explain their point of view. But I fear that Donald Trump is going to run the show again for everything that he said, for the climate that we have in a political campaign of everyone going against each other, that's going to be the focus again.
Does he go after Ted Cruz, you know, the whole thing about his citizenship and yada yada? Or does he go after, President Obama in the State of the Union in an effort to get to Hillary?
I think that's going to be the case with all the candidates. They're going to go after President Obama in his speech to the State of the Union the other night, where he talked about the economy is doing well, Americans are doing well, their best days are ahead if they work together. We need to stop the rancor and work together. Political parties have taken too much polarizing positions. And then also not even to address the situation with regards to ISIS and the capture of our sailors that very day of the speech that was given. So I'm quite sure the Republican candidates are going to come out against President Obama with regards to that. But the candidates themselves have been going against each other. Jeb Bush has been going against Marco Rubio. Chris Christie has been going against Marco Rubio. Rubio has been retaliating. And also to Donald Trump. The biggest news is that Ted Cruz may not be able to run for president. He can run, but will he be able to hold office when he gets
constitutionally?
Constitutionally.
Yeah,
so for Ted Cruz, it should be a help for him, because if that will be a concern for the Democrats, if he is the nominee, he should want to get that out in the open and clear it up now at either a court or something to say, yes, he can hold office if he is elected, because that will be in the back of many people's minds in Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina, as he goes into these primary and caucuses.
You talked about the rancor. Let me just say location, location, location. This debate is taking place 10 miles from the scene of that AME church mass shooting that happened last June. A couple of questions. Do they hold back on the rancor, the pouting, the posturing, and the crosstalk? And do they talk about gun control? I think they almost have to.
They might talk about gun control, but I would see that more in the Democrat debate to talk about that. However, I don't think that they're going to slack up on attacking each other and really going after the jugular, because this is now the second to last show that they have before the American public to have their case be made why the Iowa caucus voters ought to vote for them, as well as the primary voters coming up in the elections after the 1st of February.
And Trump's got somebody breathing down his neck, too, so.
He does, because now Ted Cruz is on his heels. Although Trump stays in the lead, he has Ted Cruz breathing down his neck. So how do we get to break out from that? Because it's due time. It's deadline time.
All right, Jennifer Carroll, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, the main debate for the leading candidate starts tonight at 9. The undercard debates a few hours earlier at 6. Both will be televised on the Fox Business Network.